Close your eyes and step into a world where beauty is a lie and every dream hides a nightmare. Imagine a palace, vast enough to swallow the air. Echoes slither across marble floors polished like bone, chandeliers dripping crystals that scatter trembling shadows along the walls. Music drifts softly, deceptively beautiful, yet beneath it lingers a tension, a faint scratching, a quiet whimper. Something in the hall watches you, waits for you. You stand there in a gown spun from silk so delicate it floats like mist. But with every step, pain erupts, sharp enough to pierce your soul. Every movement feels as if knives grind upward through your flesh, sawing through muscle and bone. Heat and fire race up your legs, clawing into your spine. The metallic scent of your own blood fills your lungs. And still you cannot scream. You cannot cry. Your tongue, taken by a merciless sea witch as payment for legs never meant to walk without bleeding, is gone. You open your mouth and nothing escapes. Only a silence so suffocating it presses against your chest like a living thing. Even the palace seems to lean in, listening, mocking. Yet you smile, because he is here, the man you saved, the one you would have torn yourself open for, and he has asked you to dance. So you do. You dance through agony that sets fire to every nerve. You dance on legs that feel split in half with every movement. Your devotion stains the marble beneath you, but he does not see it. He does not feel the silent screams trapped inside you. He sees only beauty, grace, quiet obedience, and then he introduces her, the woman he will marry, not you. Not the one who bled for him, not the one who traded her voice, her safety, her body just to stand by his side. And still you smile, still you dance, still you endure every step, every silent scream. This is not a Disney story, not a playful tale of red hair and song, not a dream wrapped in happy colors. This is Hans Christian Andersen's tale, born in 1837, a story carved from suffering, unrequited love, and quiet sacrifice. She does not regain her voice. She does not win his heart. She does not find a happy ending. She dies, dissolving into sea foam beneath unforgiving waves, leaving behind only a memory no one will ever honor, only the faint aftertaste of pain. Tonight, we descend beneath the gilded veil of the fairy tale. You will see the sea witch, her blade sharp enough to carve silence from a human mouth. You will witness the transformation that tore flesh and bone as if the body were clay. You will see the prince, blind to her torment, believing her presence came without cost. You will see the choice she faced on her final night: kill the man she loved to save herself, or dissolve into nothing and let him live oblivious. You will see her sisters, sacrificing their hair for a weapon, begging her to save herself, pleading for a life she refused to take. But most of all, you will see Hans Christian Andersen himself, a man who poured his own anguish into every line, every step on knife-sharp legs, every silent tear, every act of devotion no one ever acknowledged. This is the truth. The Little Mermaid is not a love story. It is a tragedy, a mirror reflecting the merciless truth that sometimes love is not enough. Sometimes sacrifice earns nothing. Sometimes you bleed in silence while the world moves on indifferent. If you are ready to see the darkness beneath the stories you thought you knew, return for the next chapter. Tonight, we peel back the illusion. Tonight, we trace the blood beneath the fairy tale. Tonight, you witness the agony, the silence, and the truth. She doesn't win. She doesn't triumph. She doesn't rise from suffering into joy. In this version of the tale, she simply endures the agony, endures the silence, endures the slow, creeping death carved into her destiny the moment she chose to love a human. She never gets the prince. She never regains her voice. She never earns a soul or eternal life or meaning. All she receives is pain, loss, and a death so quiet the ocean barely notices her fading. And yet, knowing all this, sensing it in every trembling moment, she still chooses him. She chooses love over breath, his happiness over her survival. She walks on knives not for a day, not for a week, but every moment of her short, agonized life. Because being near him feels like the closest she will ever come to heaven. Is that beauty or horror? Is it devotion or the purest form of self-destruction ever written? Perhaps it is all of those things at once. Perhaps that is why this story cuts so deeply. Tonight you will walk those knives, step by step, breath by breath, until you can almost feel the blood warming your feet. Tonight you will understand why Christian Andersen wrote the most honest, excruciating, soul-splitting fairy tale ever told. Because even now, the sea witch waits in her lair of drowned sailor bones. The prince celebrates on a shining ship, laughing beside the woman he will marry. And the little mermaid stands alone on the deck, a knife trembling in her hand, watching the sun rise on the last morning she will ever live. And you need to know what happens next. Let us descend. Down beneath the ocean, past the reach of sunlight, past the reach of human hope, where pressure crushes everything except nightmares, there lies a kingdom. The Sea King's palace rises from the abyss, formed from coral as ancient as forgotten gods and amber that glows like trapped souls. Towers twist upward into the darkness, vanishing into shadow. Gardens of spectral plants shiver in the currents as if whispering to the dead. Schools of jewel-bright fish drift through the halls like wandering spirits. And in that palace lived 6 daughters. 6 mermaid princesses born a year apart, shaped by the cold hands of the ocean. The eldest steady and observant, the second fierce and proud, the third gentle and shy, the fourth wild and unpredictable, the fifth artistic and drawn to sorrow, and the youngest, she was different, quiet, observant, deep thinking in a way that unsettled even the water around her. While her sisters laughed and chased currents, hunting for treasures from shipwrecks, the youngest spent her hours staring upward into the darkness above. The surface called to her, a world she had never seen, a world her mind painted with colors she could only imagine. Her garden reflected her strangeness. Her sisters collected gold goblets, pearls, shimmering shells, but she grew flowers. Red ones, red like blood in the water, red like something burning in the dark. She believed, she hoped, that this was the color of the sun. At the center of her garden stood a marble statue of a young man, dragged from the ruins of a shipwreck with her bare hands. Weathered, broken, beautiful. Her sisters laughed at her obsession, but she didn't care. She would sit before that statue for hours, tracing the cold cheek, the carved lips, imagining the world above, imagining him, imagining life beyond the suffocating dark. Often her grandmother, the old sea queen, would find her there, silent as a shadow. "You think too much about humans, child," she would murmur. "Tell me about them again," the little mermaid would whisper. "Tell me about their world." The grandmother would sigh, pulling memories from centuries of darkness. She spoke of the world above, the sun burning bright enough to set the sky ablaze, warmth touching human skin, light dancing across the air instead of through water. The little mermaid listened with her whole soul, imagining the heat she had never felt, the brightness she had never seen, the life she believed was waiting for her. A life that would cost her everything. Before you hear this part, breathe. Everything you thought you knew about the Little Mermaid, every soft, delicate, innocent version dies here. This is where the darkness begins. Humans, the grandmother whispered, lived in a realm of impossible wonder, towers scraping the sky, cities blazing with unnatural light, creatures walking not with fins but fragile bones and soft flesh. A world of fire, metal, and air. But that wasn't what fascinated the Little Mermaid. It was the soul, a thing mermaids would never have, a thing mermaids could never earn, a thing mermaids could never keep. Her grandmother spoke a truth she wished she could bury beneath the ocean floor. When we die, she murmured, we vanish, 300 years and then nothing, no spirit, no memory, no eternity, just foam. But humans were different. Their bodies rotted, but something inside them, something bright and terrible, kept going. A soul, a spark that rose upward into a heaven a mermaid would never see. Forever, they live forever, the Little Mermaid whispered. Her grandmother nodded. And we simply end. It was a knife through her heart, sharper than any blade she would later hold. The Little Mermaid leaned closer. Can we get one? Can a mermaid ever have a soul of her own? There is one way, her grandmother said, voice heavy with centuries of sadness. But it is a path paved with agony. You must find a human man who loves you more than life, more than family, more than anything he has ever known. He must bind himself to you before his God and give you his soul. But child, listen carefully, it will never happen. The mermaid froze. Humans, her grandmother continued, think our tales are monstrous. They see beauty only in weakness. They fear us. They hunt us. They would rather kill us than marry us. Even if she had legs, grotesque, painful legs, what man would ever choose her over his own blood? That kind of love, the Sea Queen said, does not exist in the human world. The Little Mermaid looked at her emerald tail, glowing faintly. The fin that carried her faster than any creature of the deep. The scales that shimmered like living jewels. Humans would call it grotesque, a nightmare, a monster. And yet, the thought of becoming nothing, dissolving into foam, terrified her more than any human's fear. She didn't just want love. She wanted existence, eternity, a place beyond the waves, even if she had to destroy herself to get it. One by one, her sisters reached the age of freedom. One by one, they rose to the surface. Each returned with a piece of the world the youngest could never touch. The first sister, practical, observant. She described a human city blazing like fire trapped in glass, lights flickering through windows, bells tolling deep and mournful, like the heartbeat of the world above. The second sister, fierce, proud, she spoke of sunsets, skies molten gold, bleeding into pink and purple streaks like torn silk across the heavens, clouds burning with light, a sky alive. The third sister, timid, gentle. She swam up rivers into the land itself, forests towering like ancient gods, animals walking on sticks for legs, children laughing by the shore, children who would scream if they saw her tail. The fourth sister, wild, untamed. She saw storms that cracked the sky open, lightning tearing through clouds like knives, whales rising from the sea like living mountains, human ships tossed like toys in the chaos. The fifth sister, melancholic dreamer. Winter greeted her with floating ice palaces, massive, glittering, sharp. Above them danced ribbons of green and violet, the northern lights, ghostly veils across the sky. Each sister returned satisfied. Each was content to live 300 years and slip into oblivion. But the youngest, she counted every hour, every minute, every heartbeat. She didn't just want to see the world above. She wanted to belong to it or die trying, past like drifting shadows. Each day, her obsession with the human world grew heavier, sharper, like a knife lodged in her heart. Each day she longed, ached, and counted the seconds until her 15th birthday. And then, finally, it came. Her grandmother's warning echoed in the deep. "You may rise," she said, "but you must not interact with humans. You must not let them see you. You are a mermaid. You will always be a mermaid." The little mermaid nodded, lips quivering. But inside, her heart pounded, not with fear, but with something darker, something that felt like destiny. This was the moment her entire life had been building toward. She swam upward through the ink-black depths, past caverns where her sisters had played, past the skeletons of merchant ships, past schools of silvery fish scattering at her passing. The pressure of the deep eased with each meter, replaced by a new alien weight, air. And then she broke through. The world above was unimaginable, a sky wider than her mind could grasp, blue dissolving into violet at the horizon. Air, thin and strange, brushed her skin like fire, unlike the comforting embrace of water. And there it was, a ship, magnificent. Three masts reaching skyward, lanterns glowing like fire trapped in glass, silk flags fluttering like banners of a forgotten empire. Music drifted across the waves, human instruments she had never heard before, lively, beautiful, haunting. She crept closer, hiding in the shadows. On the deck, humans celebrated, dressed in silks and finery, laughing, dancing, oblivious to the world below. Sailors manned the rigging with practiced hands. And in the center, the prince, her breath caught. Young, dark hair, dark eyes, gentle, kind. A smile that lit the chaos around him. He moved with ease, laughed at jokes, his presence commanding yet soft. It was his birthday. Humans raised glasses, toasting him with voices ringing across the water. She watched, frozen in awe. He was more beautiful than her marble statue, more beautiful than anything in the undersea kingdom, more beautiful than she had dared to imagine. And she couldn't look away. Hours passed. The moon rose, stars pricked the sky. And still she watched. She was falling, hopelessly, completely, insatiably, in love with a human she had known only for a few stolen hours. And then the calm shattered. Dark clouds rolled in with unnatural speed. The wind whipped across the sea. The water churned, waves rising, swelling, hungry. Sailors screamed. Orders were shouted over the roar, but the storm arrived faster than any human could command. Lightning cracked across the sky, jagged and violent. Thunder boomed, shaking the world. Rain lashed down like knives. The ship heaved violently, wooden boards snapping, the mast shattering. The hull cracked. The vessel began to sink, and the prince, where was he? Clinging to splintered wood, flailing. A wave slammed him down, dragging him into the black abyss. The little mermaid didn't hesitate. She dove. The water embraced her like a lover, but heavier now, angry, cold, violent. She fought the currents, twisting, clawing toward him, teeth grinding through the salt in her mouth. Humans could not breathe underwater. If he sank, he would die. Her hands wrapped around his chest. Strong, desperate, unwavering, she pulled. And then again and again. His head broke the surface. She held him upright, kept his mouth and nose above the waves. Rain pounded. Waves slammed. Her arms burned, muscles screaming. But she would not release him, could not, would not. All through the night, through the storm's fury, she clung to him, kept him alive, kept him breathing, kept him unknowingly, undeserving, safe. Finally, the storm passed. The sea lay flat again, silent and merciless. The prince survived. The little mermaid still clung to the edge of a world she could never truly enter. Her heart thudded with a new ache, a seed planted in salt and foam. Love, sacrifice, the weight of being invisible, unheard, and yet utterly necessary. And this was only the beginning. Dawn broke pale and silent. A thin, ghostly light spilled across the waves as if the world itself had forgotten how to be warm. The little mermaid lifted her head from the water, and there, glimmering faintly through the morning haze, was land. A beach stretched beneath a white temple crowned with arches and gardens. She dragged the prince toward it, her body trembling from exhaustion, her arms raw from holding him through the storm. In the shallow water, her fins brushed sand for the first time. She pulled him ashore and laid him gently in the grass as if the earth itself might bruise him. He was breathing, unconscious but alive. She knelt over him, trembling. Up close, he was even more devastatingly beautiful. The droplets on his eyelashes, the faint rise and fall of his chest, the soft parting of his lips each time he inhaled. She wanted to stay. She wanted him to open his eyes and see her, know her, understand the truth, that she had held him against death all night, that she had saved him. But the bells began to ring, and the world above answered. Morning was coming. Humans would soon walk the temple paths. And if they saw her tail, her shimmering emerald secret, they would scream, they would run, they would call her monster, just as her grandmother warned. The voices grew louder, young women from the temple, laughing softly as they made their morning rounds. The little mermaid's heart twisted painfully. She slipped back into the water, hiding behind the rocks, watching, waiting. One of the girls saw him first. "There's someone here, he needs help." They gathered around him, touching his shoulder, brushing his hair back. And then his eyes fluttered open. He looked up, straight at the girl in white. His lips curved into a weak, grateful smile. "You saved me," he whispered. Something inside the little mermaid collapsed. She wanted to scream through the water, "No, I saved you. I fought the storm. I kept you alive." But her voice rose only as bubbles sinking unheard beneath the tide. He didn't know. He couldn't know. He only saw what stood before his waking eyes, the girl in white. They helped him to his feet. He leaned on her, still unsteady. He looked at her with tenderness and gratitude, already building a story in his mind. A story without the little mermaid. And she slipped beneath the waves. She returned to the palace, but everything was different now. A fracture had opened inside her, a longing too deep to heal. She had been to the surface. She had touched the human world. She had loved a prince who didn't know she existed. Her sisters saw the change immediately. Her silence deepened. Her glow dimmed. She lingered in her garden for hours, staring at her marble statue, now eerily and painfully similar to the prince. "What happened up there?" they asked, but she couldn't say it. Couldn't give words to a heartbreak that felt bigger than the sea. Instead, she questioned her grandmother endlessly. "Tell me about humans. Tell me about souls. Tell me about marriage." The old queen's eyes narrowed with sorrow. "You saw someone up there, didn't you?" The little mermaid nodded. "Oh, child," her grandmother whispered, "let him go, forget him. You are a mermaid, you belong here, that is your fate." "But is there a way? Any way at all?" The grandmother hesitated. A dangerous silence settled between them. "Theoretically, yes," she finally said. "If you somehow gained legs, which is impossible, and if he fell in love with you, which is even more impossible, then yes. A marriage blessed by a human priest would give you his soul. And immortality. But it will never happen, you must accept that." But she couldn't, wouldn't. Her thoughts circled him constantly, wondering if he remembered the girl in white, wondering if he thought of his rescuer, wondering if he would ever know the truth. And as days became weeks and weeks became months, a desperate, dangerous plan took shape. There was someone who might help her, someone forbidden, someone she had been warned about all her life. The Sea Witch. The Sea Witch lived in the most treacherous part of the ocean. To reach her, the Little Mermaid would have to pass whirlpools that swallowed whales, whole volcanic vents that spewed boiling water into the cold, deep territories hunted by sharks, and things far older and far worse than sharks. But worst of all was the polyp forest. She had heard stories since childhood, whispers and warnings of creatures that looked like trees but were alive, half plant, half animal, rooted in the seafloor with limbs hanging like twisted arms, and they were hungry, very hungry. She entered the polyp forest, a place where life and death had fused into something older, hungrier, and more alive than the sea itself. The trees, if they were trees at all, towered like drowned giants. Even in the crushing stillness, their twisted limbs shifted subtly, as if sensing her presence. Each branch looked like an arm, each leaf like a warped, reaching hand. Skeletons hung from them, human bones, shattered ribs, skulls, the remains of sailors swallowed by storms. Grotesque ornaments left behind by the ocean's hunger. The Little Mermaid swam cautiously, every movement a whisper, but the forest seemed to watch her. Branches curled inward, reaching, one finger like limb wrapped around her wrist. She ripped herself free, scales drifting away like glittering blood. Another branch tangled in her hair. She tore it out, strands clinging to the grasping fingers. Her heart hammered. If she were caught, she would hang forever among the bones, another trophy in this living nightmare. At last, she found a clearing. The sea witch's home stood before her, a cathedral built from death, walls of whale ribs. A yawning whale skull for a doorway, its empty eye sockets staring into the abyss. Human bones threaded through the structure like lace, fingers, ribs, and femurs woven together with dark, unholy cords. It was beautiful in the wrong way, horrifying in the only way that mattered. But she couldn't turn back. Inside, the room glowed with eerie, shifting light. Bioluminescent creatures pulsed from jars, their glow casting monstrous shadows against the bone walls. And in the center, the witch waited. She was neither young nor old, neither beautiful nor hideous, just wrong. Something that didn't belong to sea or land. Water snakes writhed over her body, coiling around her arms and hair like living jewelry. Yet she sat perfectly still, letting them move as if they were pieces of her own flesh. Her eyes, black, endless, without iris or white, locked onto the Little Mermaid the moment she entered. "I know why you're here," the witch said. Her voice scraped like stone dragged across bone. "You do," the Little Mermaid whispered. "You know why I came?" The witch smiled, a thin, splitting curve. "Of course, you want legs, you want to walk among humans. You want the prince you saved to love you, you want an immortal soul." The Little Mermaid lifted her chin, trembling but defiant. I want it anyway. Do you care?" The witch rose slowly, water snakes slithering across the floor as she moved, a predator examining prey. "Let me explain," she rasped. "The legs, the transformation, it will be agony, like a sword cleaving your body in two, every scale, every bone, every fin ripped apart. You will feel it. Every second." She circled the mermaid, her voice dark and precise. "And afterward, every step you take will feel like knives, broken glass, your feet will bleed without end. Pain will be your shadow, your companion, your price for beauty." The Little Mermaid swallowed hard. "But I will be graceful, won't I?" The witch laughed, a sound that rattled the bone walls and stirred the glowing creatures in their jars. "Oh yes," she hissed. "You will move like a dream. Humans will marvel at you. But inside every step is suffering, blood, unseen torment hidden beneath elegance." The Little Mermaid thought of the prince, of the soul she had been denied, of eternity that existed just beyond her reach. 300 years of life, then nothing. I'll endure it, she whispered. The witch's laughter curled around her like smoke. Of course you will. Fools in love always think they can endure anything. The witch drifted toward a massive cauldron in the corner, an ancient vessel shaped like the ribcage of some forgotten leviathan. Heat pulsed from it enough to make the water tremble. "Then let me brew your little miracle," she said. The little mermaid hesitated. "Wait, the price. What do you want in return?" The witch's smile stretched slowly like something carving itself into her face. "Ah, payment." She stirred the cauldron with a long, yellowed bone. The water darkened as though the shadows leaned closer to hear. "You possess the most exquisite voice in all the oceans. When you sing, the currents stop. Even sharks pause mid-hunt. And when you speak, it is pure music." The mermaid's hand flew to her throat. "My voice?" The witch glided to a wall of relics, unhooked a long blade, and let it glimmer beneath the lanternfish glow. "Yes, I will take your voice. And I will take it the simplest way." She raised the blade. "I will cut out your tongue." The mermaid's stomach dropped. Her tail curled protectively. "Cut it out, then I'll never sing again, never speak. I won't even be able to tell the prince." "Anything," the witch snapped. "You will be silent forever, a pretty ghost among humans, bleeding feet, a smile hiding agony." The mermaid's thoughts spiraled. "But I'll have my eyes, my grace, my devotion. Won't he see me? Won't he know?" The witch chuckled. "Perhaps. Perhaps not. Choose." This was the crossroads. Refuse, and she would live her quiet 300 years, then dissolve into forgotten foam. Agree, and she would trade her voice, her identity, for a chance at love. Before she could answer, the witch added, almost lazily, "Oh, I nearly forgot. A small detail." The mermaid stiffened. "What detail?" "If the prince marries another woman, if he chooses anyone but you, then the morning after his wedding, before the sun rises, your heart will shatter. Literally, and you will melt into sea foam. No long life, no return home, just gone." Coldness wrapped around her like iron. "And if he chooses me," she whispered, "if he loves me, then you will share his soul and live forever. But what if he only likes me? What if he cares for me, but not completely?" "Not enough," the witch hissed. "It must consume him, a love above his kingdom, his family, his own life. Anything less and you die." She leaned close. "So tell me, do you still want this fate, to walk in agony, to bleed with every step? To suffer in silence for a love that may never be returned, to die alone if he chooses another?" The mermaid closed her eyes. She saw his face, his smile, his breath rising softly on the shore where she saved him. She saw sunlight, a world above, a soul that would never fade. When she opened her eyes, they burned with resolve. "Yes, I still want it." The witch turned back to the cauldron. She tossed in things better left unnamed, organs, poisonous coral, a vial of darkness that drank the light. She chanted as the potion shifted from black to white to crystal clear. At last, she poured it into a glowing crystal flask. "Drink this on the shore before sunrise. Your tail will split, your bones will break and reshape. Your legs will form and your suffering will begin." She placed the flask down, then lifted the sword again. "Now for payment." The mermaid froze but forced her mouth open. The witch's cold, slick fingers grabbed her tongue and pulled. Tears streamed down the mermaid's face. "This will hurt," the witch said pleasantly. The blade came down. Pain exploded through her, white, blinding, devouring. She tried to scream, but only a broken gasp escaped. Blood drifted through the water like red smoke. The witch held up the severed tongue, studying it with delight, then swallowed it whole. "Delicious," she murmured. "So much sweeter than fish." The little mermaid clutched her throat, blood drifting into the dark water like smoke from a dying fire. She tried to scream, tried to cry, but only silence came. Her voice, the most precious thing she possessed, was gone. The witch slipped the glowing crystal bottle into her trembling hands. "Good luck, little fool," she whispered. "May your prince be worth every drop of what you've lost." The mermaid didn't look back. She couldn't. If she hesitated for even a heartbeat, she would collapse into despair. So she forced herself forward, out through the whale's skull doorway, past the glowing jars, past the forest of writhing polyps that still reached for her like hungry, grasping hands. She swam upward, past volcanic fissures and black vents, past predators who circled when they sensed her blood, then fled from the unnatural magic clinging to her. As she passed her father's palace, the entire ocean seemed to hold its breath. It was night. Everyone slept, her sisters in their shimmering chambers, her grandmother beneath drifting jelly lanterns. Her room, her garden, her statue, all still, untouched, unaware. Through the window of her chamber, she saw it all suspended in soft blue. Her world, her life, the home she would never enter again. A movement caught her eye. One of her sisters drifted to the window. Their gazes met. Her sister's face twisted in shock and horror at the blood, at the missing voice, at the pain carved into her expression. Her mouth opened in a silent scream. The little mermaid turned away. She couldn't pause, not even for love. She kicked upward, leaving the palace and her old life buried beneath her. She swam toward the surface, toward dawn, toward the prince, toward love or annihilation. By the time she reached the shore, darkness was melting into a bruised pre-dawn blue. Exhaustion crushed her. Each stroke had grown heavier, her body weakened by blood loss and terror. She dragged herself onto the sand, the same place she had saved him, where he once lay in her arms. Now it was she trembling at the edge of death. Air touched her scales for the first time, heavy, dry, foreign. The world above felt like another planet pressing its weight onto her. She opened the crystal bottle. The liquid inside glowed faintly, smelling of sweetness, metal, and something sharp enough to cut the soul. This was the moment. There was no return. She looked back at the sea that had cradled her since birth, then toward the prince's distant palace. One life or another. She lifted the bottle and drank. For a moment, nothing. Then pain, not the pain of a wound, not the pain of fear. A cosmic agony that tore through her body as if she were being rebuilt by fire. Her tail began to split, slow, brutal, merciless. Scales ripped away like falling blades. Bones cracked, twisted, reshaped. Flesh tore and reformed. Fins dissolved into raw, throbbing skin. She convulsed violently, clawing at the sand, her silent screams more haunting than any sound she could have made. Her tail tore apart until two human legs lay where her ocean-born form had been, soft, pink, bleeding. But the suffering didn't stop. Every nerve burned like molten metal. Her bones quivered. Her feet pulsed with phantom knives. The witch had not lied. She tried to cry for help, to beg anyone, anything, but her voice was gone. All she could do was collapse and finally, mercifully, lose consciousness. The world shifted. Warmth, light, a shadow falling over her. A hand touched her shoulder, gentle, careful. Miss, can you hear me? Are you hurt?" Her eyelids fluttered open. The prince closer than ever before. Sunrise framed his face, his dark hair tousled, his expression filled with the worry she had prayed to see again. She tried to speak, to greet him, to say his name. Her lips parted, but no sound came, not a whisper, not a breath. Just silence. Her first moment with him began with her voice already stolen. The prince's eyes widened in shock, his voice soft but alarmed. "You're hurt, aren't you? Can you understand me?" The little mermaid nodded. "And you cannot speak?" She shook her head slowly, fragile and unsure. "You must have survived a wreck," he murmured. "You're trembling and you aren't wearing anything." He removed his cloak without hesitation and wrapped it around her shoulders. Warm, heavy, human, the first human embrace she had ever felt. Only then did she realize her transformation had taken everything. Her voice, her tail, her home, her clothes, her entire identity. The prince helped her sit up, steadying her like she was something delicate and breakable. "Try to stand," he urged. "Let me help you." He slipped an arm around her waist and lifted her. Her new feet touched the ground, and agony erupted. Fire through the bone, glass beneath her skin, blades slicing her flesh with every ounce of weight. The witch had spoken the truth, every step would be torture, but she could not scream. Her throat was silent. Her suffering was trapped inside her, locked behind lips that could no longer make a sound. She clung to his arm, shaking. "Easy," the prince whispered. "You're too weak, I'll get help." Guards rushed toward them, a stretcher. Blankets, urgency, she wanted to protest. "I can walk, I will endure it. I chose this." But without a voice, all she had were her eyes, wide, pleading, glittering with tears she tried desperately to hide. She was lifted onto the stretcher. The prince walked beside her all the way to the palace, never once looking away. "You're safe now," he told her. "We'll protect you, I promise." If only he knew what she had sacrificed. If only she could tell him she had once saved his life. At the palace, warm hands washed the salt from her skin, untangled her hair, dressed her in soft fabrics and delicate shoes. Then came the moment she feared, walking. Her feet touched the floor. Agony followed instantly. Knives, glass, fire, she took a single step. Blood filled her shoes, bright and hot, seeping through the leather, staining the marble beneath her. "She's bleeding," someone gasped. "Look at her feet," but she kept walking. Step after step, suffering after suffering. And then something astonishing happened. Despite the agony, she moved with impossible grace, smooth, weightless, almost floating, like water made human. Every motion fluid, elegant, hauntingly beautiful. She moves like she isn't touching the ground, like she's dancing in air. She was born of the sea, shaped by its currents. Her every gesture carried the poetry of the ocean. Later, the prince returned. He found her by the window, staring out at the sea she could never return to. "How are you feeling?" he asked quietly. "Your feet, they said you were bleeding. Are you in pain?" She shook her head and smiled. A gentle lie. He placed a pen and paper in her hands. "Can you write your name?" She stared at the page, blank, human, unfamiliar. The symbols she knew belonged to coral tablets deep in the ocean. After a long silence, he understood. "That's all right," he said softly. "We'll find another way." He sat beside her, studying her like she was some rare, impossible miracle washed ashore. "You seem otherworldly," he murmured. "Not quite human. Not quite from here." He paused, thinking. "I'll call you Marina. Does that sound right?" Her heart fluttered, close enough to the truth she could never speak. She nodded. "Marina," he said gently. "Welcome to the palace. You'll stay here, my guest, until we understand where you belong." Not his love, not his chosen one, just his guest. But she was close to him now, close enough to hope, close enough to hurt. He welcomed her as a guest, not a friend. Not a lover, nothing more. Her heart sank, but she told herself it was enough. She was here, near him. That was all she had dreamed of. "You must be tired," the prince said softly. "Rest, heal. We'll talk tomorrow." He left, closing the door with gentle finality. Marina stared at the door, trying not to cry. She had made it. She had legs, she was human, but he didn't know her. He didn't know she had saved his life. To him, she was only a strange girl washed ashore. Her feet throbbed. The pain pulsed up her ankles. She looked down at her shoes, soaked with blood. She removed them slowly. Her feet were raw, torn, every step nothing but open wounds. This would be her life now, bleeding, burning, as if sharp knives were forever trapped inside her bones. She looked out at the sea, her home disappearing in the distance. Had she made a terrible mistake? There was no going back, no voice, no tale, no return, only forward and a hope so fragile it barely lived. Days passed, then weeks. She learned how to exist in a human body. Every morning she forced herself to stand, to walk, to smile. By nightfall, her shoes were drenched with blood again. No one spoke of it. Perhaps no one dared. The prince was kind, gentle. He visited often. He asked her yes or no questions. He told her stories about his life. She memorized every word, treasuring them like pearls. But he never spoke of love, never looked at her the way she looked at him. "You're like a little sister to me," he said one day. "I feel protective of you." The words cut deeper than any knife in her feet, but she only smiled and nodded. She followed him everywhere, on rides, on long walks, up stone steps and steep paths that shredded her feet all over again. She glided beside him, silent, graceful, bleeding. He admired her composure. "You're always so pleasant," he said, "always smiling, never complaining." If only he knew the cost. Then came the night of the ball. Music filled the palace, light shimmered in every room. The prince arrived at her door dressed for celebration. "Will you dance with me tonight?" he asked. "I'd love to see you dance. You move so beautifully when you walk." Her heart soared and froze, dance on feet that felt like broken glass. Dance, knowing she might collapse, but she nodded. In the ballroom, he led her to the center. "Just follow my lead," he whispered. The music began, she moved. Every step was fire, every turn a blade. Blood seeped through silk slippers and marked the gleaming floor, and yet she danced. With impossible grace, as if her body still belonged to the sea, as if the air itself carried her. The ballroom fell silent, every eye followed her. A human girl, bleeding, suffering, moving with a beauty they had never seen. People pressed to the edges of the ballroom, staring in disbelief. "She's incredible," someone whispered. "I've never seen anyone move like that." The prince's face lit with pride. "You're amazing, Marina. Absolutely amazing." She danced until she nearly collapsed, until her vision dimmed, until her legs trembled with fire and every step tore through her muscles like knives. And still she danced, for him, because he was smiling, because he was watching, because for this brief moment she mattered. When the music stopped, applause erupted. The prince embraced her tightly. "Thank you, that was unbelievable." She smiled through tears she could not explain. She nodded silently, painfully. Later that night, alone in her room, she removed her slippers. Her feet were shredded, raw, bleeding. The silk was ruined, stained dark with the price of her silence. She limped to the window and looked toward the ocean. Her sisters rose from the waves, 5 silhouettes with worried eyes and outstretched hands. They saw what she had become. They saw the pain she could never voice. Marina pressed her palm to the cold glass. She could not go back. She could not swim to them. This world was hers now, beautiful, merciless, human. Her sisters sank beneath the waves once more, disappearing into the darkness. Marina turned away, washed her feet, and wrapped them in fresh bandages. Tomorrow she would walk again. Tomorrow she would smile again. She had no choice. She had traded everything for this, her voice, her family, her world under the sea. 300 years of life given up for a chance at love. Now all she could do was endure, hope, bleed, pray that his heart would one day turn toward her. Weeks passed, maybe months. The prince still saw her only as a friend, a sister, never anything more, and time was running out. One day he would choose a bride, and if it was not her, she would die. One evening he invited her to walk with him through the palace gardens. The sky glowed with colors she had once only imagined: orange, pink, gold. "Marina," he said quietly, "I need to tell you something." Her pulse quickened. He seemed troubled. "About a year ago I almost died," he began. "A storm destroyed my ship. I was thrown into the sea, drowning. Everything went dark." Her breath caught. This was the moment she had saved him. "But someone rescued me," he continued. "A young woman. I saw her only for a moment before I fainted again. She had gentle eyes. She was wearing white. I think she was from the temple near the beach where they found me." No. Marina wanted to cry out. That girl hadn't saved him. She had only found him afterward. She, Marina, had braved the storm. She had kept him alive. But she couldn't speak. She could only listen. "I've been searching for her ever since," he said softly. "The woman who saved my life, I want to thank her." He paused, staring toward the sea. "I think I might be in love with her. Strange, isn't it? I barely know her. But she's been in my thoughts ever since that night." Marina's chest tightened, a crushing ache spreading through her. Her legs throbbed, her heart trembled. Her soul begged for a voice she no longer had, and still she stayed silent. The prince's words struck her like a weapon. "The girl who pulled me from the ocean." Her heart didn't just ache, it cracked, a thin fracture spreading through her chest like splintered glass. The witch's warning rose in her memory like a curse on cold wind. "If he gives his heart to another, yours will shatter, and you will dissolve into foam." And now he was confessing love for someone else, someone who hadn't saved him, someone who appeared only after Marina held his dying body through the storm, someone who lived in his memory because of a mistake. To him, that girl was a miracle, and Marina was only a shadow beside him. The prince smiled softly, unaware of the devastation in his words. "You probably think I'm ridiculous, falling in love with someone I barely met. But that moment being pulled from death, it changed me." Marina nodded, though her throat felt too tight to breathe. Of course she understood. Love born in an instant, she knew that better than anyone. She had watched him breathe against her shoulder, held him as the storm raged around them. But she could never tell him. Her voice was gone, her truth stolen. They walked back to the palace together, but she felt like a ghost drifting beside him. Her feet bled with every step, leaving faint red stains across the stone, stains swallowed by the night as if trying to spare her dignity. In her room, she lay awake in suffocating darkness. How could she make him understand? How could she reveal who she truly was? There was no answer. She could only smile, only nod, only bleed, all while he longed for a phantom, a girl who never saved him, never held him, never risked her soul for him. Marina pressed her hand over her heart, feeling its uneven rhythm, fragile and exhausted, counting down. The palace shifted in the days that followed. Servants rushed through corridors with fear in their eyes. Guards hurried past. Whispers grew. Something was wrong. That evening the prince entered her room, shoulders heavy, eyes troubled. "Marina, my father has arranged something." A pause, a breath. "A marriage." Her blood froze. "There's a neighboring kingdom," he said. "A political union would strengthen both lands. Their king has a daughter, a princess. My father wants me to marry her." Marina felt her world collapse like a wave crushing stone until it shatters. "I told him no," the prince insisted. I said I can't marry someone I don't love. I'm still waiting for the girl who saved me." He looked at Marina with hopeful eyes that cut deeper than any wound she carried. "Do you think I'm foolish for holding on to hope like this?" She shook her head. How could she call him foolish for believing in miracles when she had become one? But the king's decision was final. "We're sailing to meet her next week," he whispered. "I have to go, he's forcing my hand." Marina wanted to scream, to shake him, to force him to see her. She was right here, the girl he sought, the girl who loved him, the girl who saved him. But her voice was gone. "You'll come with me, won't you?" he asked gently. "I need a friend on this journey." Friend, always a friend, Marina nodded. She had no other choice. A week later, the royal ship cut across the open sea, the prince, his guards, his attendants, and Marina, quiet, small, unseen. Every step on the wooden deck tore her feet open again, but she never slowed. At night, she stood alone at the railing while the sea breathed below, dark, endless, familiar. Her true home, her stolen birthright. Then the water stirred. Figures rose from the black depths like shimmering ghosts, 5 shapes reaching upward, her sisters, pale with grief, arms outstretched toward her. Behind them came her father, her grandmother, more faces, more forms, an entire kingdom rising toward the surface, all of them filled with sorrow and desperate love. Her world, her family, the life she could never return to. Marina stood trembling on the deck, caught between 2 futures, one that was killing her and one she could never reclaim. Marina leaned over the railing, reaching down toward the shifting black water beneath her. Her family, her sisters, her grandmother, her father, the kingdom she had left behind, all surfaced in ghostly forms, calling silently, their lips moving in desperate unison. "Come back, come home, please," she wanted to answer. She wanted to dive into the waves, wrap herself in the cold embrace of the ocean, let the water take her away. But she couldn't. Legs, human legs, heavy and foreign, bound her to the deck. Breathless air replaced the water that had been her world. Her heart throbbed painfully as tears streamed down her cheeks. Her grandmother reached up, lifting a trembling hand toward her. Marina reached down, their fingers almost brushing, almost touching. But the distance was insurmountable, a cruel chasm between 2 worlds. Slowly, impossibly, her family sank beneath the waves again, leaving her alone, trembling on the deck, staring at the place where they had been. Alone, human, cut off from everything she had ever loved. She pressed her hands to her chest, feeling the rapid, fragile beat of her heart, wondering how much longer it could endure the strain of hope and despair entwined. 3 days later, the royal ship arrived at the neighboring kingdom. White stone buildings gleamed in the sun, their gold domes catching the light. Gardens flourished with fountains and statues, and flowers spilled over terraces in every imaginable color. Marina followed the attendants quietly, her feet aching, each step igniting the fire of pain in her legs. The prince went to meet the princess while Marina waited. She sat in the palace garden, staring at the fountains and the blooming roses, her stomach churning with dread and anticipation. Hours passed. She watched the shadow of someone approach, the prince returning. His face glowed with awe, joy, and disbelief, and before he even spoke, Marina's heart sank to her stomach. "Marina, you won't believe it," he said, rushing toward her, his hands almost trembling. "The princess, she looks exactly like the girl from the temple, the one who saved me." Marina's breath caught. No, that wasn't her. That moment, that girl wasn't her. She had been there, holding him through the storm, cradling him in the freezing darkness while he teetered on the edge of death. She had been the one. The prince continued, oblivious to the truth tearing Marina apart. It's incredible, the same face, the same kind eyes. It's as if fate brought us together. I've been searching for her for so long, and here she is. Marina's stomach turned. She could feel nausea curling through her chest, threatening to consume her. This girl, Sophia, radiant, kind, perfect in every way, had unknowingly stolen the life and love that Marina had bled for. The prince grabbed her hands, eyes shining with excitement. I think I'm going to marry her. Marina stared at him, at the man she had sacrificed everything for, at the man who was about to give his heart to another. I know this is sudden, he said, but sometimes you just know, don't you? You meet someone and you just know they're the one. Marina nodded mechanically. Yes, sometimes you just know. Just like she had known the first time she saw him, floating unconscious in the storm, just like she had known when she gave up her tail, her voice, her life for him. And yet he would never know. The prince and Sophia spent days together, laughing, walking through gardens, talking in soft voices, sharing smiles and whispered secrets. Marina followed silently, a shadow of devotion and pain. Sophia was kind, genuine, and beautiful, the type of person anyone would love if circumstances were different. But circumstances were not different. Sophia was stealing the only thing Marina had left, her chance at love, her chance at a soul, her life itself. A week later, the prince knelt in a rose-filled garden. Sophia, he said, voice steady, eyes full of love. Yes, she whispered, tears of happiness sliding down her cheeks. The kingdom rejoiced, families celebrated, alliances were sealed. All except Marina. She watched from the shadows, silent. Her bandaged feet throbbed, soaked with blood from walking on shoes she couldn't feel without pain. Her heart, already fractured, began to splinter further. Every cheer, every laugh, every tear of happiness from Sophia was a reminder that she had lost him entirely. The ceremony was set at sea, a union of two kingdoms. The ship's deck gleamed in the sunlight, adorned with silk, ribbons, and fresh flowers. Guests in their finest attire murmured, laughing, moving through the ship like a living painting of opulence. Marina wore pale blue silk. Her shoes were soft and new, but blood already soaked them. She smiled anyway. Pain was her companion now, a constant reminder of what she had sacrificed. At noon, the ceremony began. The prince stood at the altar in white and gold, poised and regal. Princess Sophia descended the aisle, her gown embroidered with pearls, a train so long it required 3 attendants to carry it. Marina watched silently, every step of Sophia's descent echoing in her mind like a death knell. Marina's heart thudded painfully in her chest. Every beat reminded her. She had given everything for this man, and yet she would watch him love another. Some moments break you so quietly that no one hears the sound but you. Marina stood among the bridesmaids, her hands trembling as she held the delicate train of Sophia's gown. She watched the bride walk toward the prince, watched their eyes meet with radiant, unquestionable love, and in that instant, something inside her splintered. Not a crack, a fracture that ran straight through her soul. The priest's voice echoed across the deck. A union of love, a joining of souls, souls. That word hit Marina like a blade. She understood enough of human language to know what it meant. Sophia would share the prince's soul. Sophia would inherit his eternal life, his immortality. Marina, on the other hand, would inherit nothing but death. I now pronounce you husband and wife. Applause erupted. The prince kissed his bride. Joy swelled around them like a rising tide. Marina clapped with the rest, her smile stiff and puppet-like. Inside, she was hollow, bleeding, breaking. After the ceremony, the grand feast began on the ship's deck. Music swirled, laughter rose, dancers spun beneath lanterns. At the head table, the prince and Sophia fed each other fruit, laughing between each bite. They looked impossibly perfect, a portrait of joy she could never belong to. Marina sat far from them at a different table, swallowed by the crowd, unseen as always. The mute girl, the odd girl, the girl no one ever tried to understand. If she disappeared at that moment, no one would have noticed. Then the prince's voice carried across the deck. "Marina, will you dance for us? One last performance for my wedding." One last performance. If only he knew how true that was. Marina rose. Every step sent shockwaves of agony up her legs. Her feet were raw, torn, leaving faint trails of blood on the wooden planks. Yet she walked to the center of the deck and lifted her head. The musicians began to play, and Marina danced, not as a human, not as a mermaid, but as something between worlds, carved from sorrow and impossible hope. She poured everything she had left, all her love, her devotion, her grief, her doom, into each movement. Guests stared, breathless. Even the bride and groom fell silent. "She's extraordinary, like an angel," someone whispered. "No, something older, something else," another murmured. Marina danced until her feet were shredded flesh, until droplets of blood patterned the deck, until her vision blurred and her knees trembled. But she kept going, because this was it, her final night, her last chance to move on the legs she had paid for with horror and pain. When the music ended, applause thundered around her. The prince walked to her, smiling warmly, unaware she was dying. He hugged her. "Thank you, Marina, for everything, for being my friend through all of this." Friend, always friend, a word that hurt more than knives. She nodded and smiled because it was all she could do. The celebration continued long into the night. Eventually, the bride and groom retreated to their cabin, to warmth, to comfort, to love. Marina remained on the deck, alone beneath the cold stars. She knew what waited for her. The witch's words echoed in her mind. "When dawn touches the sea, your heart will break, and you will become foam." Dawn was only hours away. She was 16, and she was going to die. Marina stared at the cabin where the prince and Sophia slept, wrapped in each other's arms. On her last night alive, he was with someone else. Happy, content, blissfully unaware she was about to dissolve into nothingness. She had given up everything for him. Her home, her people, her voice, 300 years of life, her own body, her safety. And in return, she had received only pain, loneliness, and a fleeting smile. Was any of it worth it? She didn't know anymore. Marina leaned against the ship's railing. The sea stretched endlessly beneath her, black and silent, waiting. Would anyone even notice when she vanished? The ocean was smooth as glass, reflecting a sky full of cold stars. She stared at the vastness of it all, trying to piece together her 16 small years. 15 years beneath the waves. One borrowed, agonizing year on land. All of it leading here. She thought of her sisters, their laughter, their songs, her father stern but loving, her grandmother warning her, begging her to stay. Would they know when she died? Would they feel the ripple of her ending? Or would she become a question that haunted them forever? Below deck, the prince slept peacefully beside his new wife. He would wake tomorrow and see she was gone. He might feel a moment of sorrow and then continue with his perfect life. He would grow old, become king, raise children, live in love, and he would never know, never truly know that she had saved him, adored him, bled for him, and finally died for him. And that truth, that cruel silence, was almost worse than death itself. Some tragedies don't explode. They fade slowly, silently, like a candle drowning in its own wax. Marina stared at her hands under the starlight. At first, she thought it was a trick of the moon, but no, they were fading. Her fingers looked translucent, like mist caught in human shape. The transformation had already begun. When the sun rose, she would not die dramatically or violently. She would simply dissolve, become pale sea foam carried across the waves. And then, nothing, no soul, no afterlife, no return to the ocean, no 300 years of mermaid life, just non-existence. Her mind could not grasp what it would feel like. How does one imagine the moment the self stops? When every memory, every dream, every fear simply ends? She tried, she failed, but the truth remained. It was coming anyway. She thought about what she was losing. Not just life, that alone was enough, but everything life contained. She'd never see her sisters again, never swim through her glowing underwater gardens, never chase the warm shimmer of sunlight across the ocean's surface, never grow older, wiser, never love again, never be loved by anyone. Her entire existence would end at 16, not because she'd done something evil, not because she'd made a selfish choice, but because she'd loved someone who didn't love her back. She didn't blame him. He had been kind to her when he could be. He just hadn't loved her. That wasn't his fault. Maybe it was hers for believing he might understand her silence, recognize her sacrifice, feel something deeper. But love and sacrifice are not currency. You cannot trade them for someone's heart. Her tears finally fell. She cried not just from pain, but from the unbearable smallness of her life's ending. And that was when she saw movement in the sea below. The water rippled. 5 shapes rose through the dark, emerging like ghosts, her sisters. But they were different, horribly different. Their long, beautiful hair, the pride of every mermaid, their symbol of beauty and power, was gone, cut off, ragged, uneven. Their bare heads looked vulnerable, almost wounded. Something had taken their beauty from them. Something had demanded a price. They gestured desperately, calling to her without sound. Marina leaned over the railing, heart hammering. One sister lifted something above the surface. A knife. She threw it onto the deck. It clattered across the wood and slid to Marina's feet. Marina picked it up. The handle was warm, as if someone had held it tightly or cried onto it. Her sisters kept gesturing, hands frantic. Hurry, listen. Marina pieced it together. They had gone to the sea witch. They had traded their hair, their most precious possession, for the only thing the witch could offer, a way to save Marina. The witch's message was clear. If you kill the prince before sunrise, if his blood touches your feet, your legs will become a tail again. You will live. You will return home. You will have your 300 years. Her sisters begged her with their eyes, please. Don't die, come home. She had a way out now, a path back to life. All she had to do was kill the man who never loved her. The knife felt unnaturally heavy in her hand. She glanced at the cabin, then at her sisters, then at the knife again. It was simple: go inside, one quick cut, one heartbeat, one life taken. In exchange for her own, she could return to the sea, to her family. To the world she had sacrificed everything to leave. She walked toward the cabin. Her sisters watched in the water, 5 shaking silhouettes, their hope trembling like the ripples around them. The door was unlocked. Of course it was. He felt safe here. Marina pushed it open. Inside, the cabin was quiet, dark, peaceful. A thin strip of starlight fell across the bed. The prince and Sophia slept entwined, his arm wrapped lovingly around his bride. Their faces glowed with contentment. Marina moved closer. Her steps were soundless. Her breath barely stirred the air. She raised the knife. Her hand trembled, but she held on. She deserved to live. She had every right to fight for her own existence. He hadn't loved her. He hadn't even known what she'd lost for him. Why should she die for a man who had never chosen her? But then her eyes softened. She saw not a prince, but the boy she had saved from the sea, the boy she had held through the storm, the boy who had been kind to her even when he did not understand her. He had never been cruel, never lied, never promised her anything. His only sin was not loving her back. Could she really kill him for that, even if it meant she lived, even if it spared her the terror of disappearing forever? Her heart gave her the answer. No, not him, not this way, not for this reason. Marina lowered the knife. She memorized his face, every line, every shadow, every breath. Then she leaned down and kissed his forehead softly, tenderly. He didn't stir. "I love you," she mouthed silently. "I hope you're happy. I hope your life is long and beautiful. I hope you never learn what this cost me." She turned, walked away, closed the cabin door behind her. Her sisters looked up at her, their faces full of desperation, wet with tears that dissolved into the sea. Marina shook her head. She couldn't. She wouldn't. She raised a hand in farewell. The eastern sky was brightening. The first hint of dawn, minutes left, maybe seconds. She mouthed to them, "I'm sorry, I love you, but this is my choice." The knife slipped from her hand and clattered on the deck. Her fate decided. Her sisters reached for her one last time, their hands stretching desperately through the waves. Then, with mournful cries, they sank back into the depths, vanishing beneath the black water. Gone. Marina stared at the knife in her hand, the knife her sisters had traded their radiant, flowing hair for. The knife that could have saved her, that could have torn open the prince's fate to stitch hers together again. Her fingers trembled. She hurled it as far as she could into the ocean. It vanished into the dark, leaving only a faint ripple. She turned to the east as the first streaks of dawn crept across the horizon, turning the sky from ink black to bruised purples and fiery pinks. Her last sunrise. The warmth did nothing to comfort her. It only highlighted the impossible choice she had refused. Her legs began to change. The flesh faded like morning mist, vanishing, leaving only an airy transparency. A cold, creeping fear wrapped around her chest. This was death, her body unmaking itself, piece by piece. She closed her eyes and braced for the end. A year of endless pain, a lifetime of sacrifices, all for love that had never been returned. And yet, even in the face of obliteration, she felt a strange pride. She had loved with everything she had. She had chosen kindness over vengeance, the prince's happiness over her own survival. She had remained herself. That might mean something, even if it was meaningless to the world. The sun rose higher. Her body felt lighter, intangible. Then came the white, a blinding, all-encompassing void. She expected to cease to exist entirely. Her mind prepared for nothingness, but nothing came. Instead, her senses shifted. She was no longer sinking into the sea, no longer dissolving into water or foam. Her body became ethereal like a wisp of air, a strand of mist caught in the wind. Weightless, boundless. She looked down to see the ship shrinking beneath her, the sea stretching endlessly in all directions. Then she heard them whispering voices, delicate as the wind through reeds. "Come, sister, join us. You are one of us now." Marina turned and saw them, dozens of beings shimmering with translucent light, floating effortlessly in the dawn sky. Their forms flickered between substance and spirit, beautiful, terrifying, alien. "What are you?" she breathed, and to her astonishment the sound emerged softly like a chime carried by the breeze. "We are the daughters of the air," one said. "We exist between worlds, neither dead nor alive, neither here nor there. You belong to this space now." "Am I dead?" Not entirely, another replied. You have been transformed. Your sacrifice has granted you this existence. You chose love over vengeance. You preserved his life while surrendering your own. Marina's voice trembled. But I got nothing in return. The prince never loved me. I never gained a soul. I gave everything and received nothing. Why? The daughters hovered closer, their forms radiating compassion touched with sorrow. We, too, have no souls. We drift and serve and wander the world unseen. But your life now carries potential. Through your deeds you may shape your fate. She felt despair clawing at her. Potential, I will still vanish eventually. My existence will end just like the mermaids who fade into the sea. What purpose is this? A gentle movement swept through them. They ascended higher, drawing her with them above the clouds. The world unfolded below, oceans, mountains, forests, and cities glowing under the rising sun. We fly across the world, one said. We bring relief to those suffering under heat, loneliness, and sorrow. We carry the scent of flowers, the chill of wind, the whisper of comfort. We do not live for ourselves, but for the world. How long? Marina asked, her voice small. 300 years, they answered. The same lifespan the mermaids enjoy, 300 years of wandering, of unseen service. But through acts of compassion, you may shorten this time. You may earn what was denied to you, a soul of your own. Marina laughed bitterly. 300 years. I gave up everything to live a single human year, a year of pain and unrequited love for this. It is not nothing, they said gently. Your choices define you. Your love defined you. Through selflessness, you may earn what mortals call a soul. Her eyes shifted to the ship below, where the prince stepped onto the deck, scanning the horizon. His face showed concern, confusion, the trace of loss. His hand rested on Sophia's arm. He would move on. He would forget her. He would grow old, live, and carry his soul into eternity, while she would drift through centuries unseen. It's not fair, she whispered. No, one of the daughters said softly. Fairness is not part of this world, but choice is, and you, Marina, have chosen. She rose higher into the sky, carried by the wind. What if I refuse? You cannot refuse, a daughter answered. The transformation is complete. You are one of us now. The only choice left is how you will live, whether to serve, to comfort, to touch lives, or simply to drift until your time ends. Your soul, if earned, is the reward for your perseverance. Marina inhaled the cold, endless air. Her heart ached with loss, but somewhere inside, a small ember of purpose flickered. She would serve. She would endure. She would exist unseen, but not broken. And for the first time in a long while, she did not cry. She rose into the sky, light, sorrowful, and unbound. Her existence suspended between worlds, carrying the ghost of her love, the pain of her loss, and the fragile, unbroken will to survive. Marina hovered among the daughters, their forms wavering like smoke caught in sunlight. Translucent, fragile, uncertain, shadows clung to them as if the air itself mourned their existence. Do you resent it? Marina asked, her voice trembling, almost swallowed by the cold, restless air. One daughter drifted closer, her face pale, almost spectral. Sometimes, she admitted, we were all like you once. All of us sacrificing, hoping, serving those who could never see us. And what did we get in return? Nothing. Only this, drifting between worlds, suspended in a life that is neither ours nor theirs. Another daughter emerged from the mist, her eyes reflecting centuries of silent suffering. Some of us fade into nothing, she whispered. This is better. At least we exist. At least we have purpose, hope. Hope, Marina repeated. The word tasted bitter, hollow, alien. She had hoped so much for the prince's love, for a soul, for a life worth remembering, and yet all hopes had dissolved, leaving only the ache of emptiness. What if I don't earn enough? What if I serve for 300 years and it's still nothing? What if I fail? She whispered. The first daughter's eyes, dark and fathomless, met hers. Then you dissolve, just as you might have this morning, but 300 more years of feeling, of trying, that is something. Even if it is fleeting, even if it is pain, it is still existence. Marina's gaze dropped to the ship below. The prince had vanished inside, oblivious to the girl who had given everything. The world spun onward, indifferent. Every dream she had nurtured, her life, her voice, her soul, had been swallowed by the tide. Was this love or madness? Perhaps the two were inseparable. "Come," said the daughter. "We have work to do." Marina hesitated. Below, the endless water stretched like a mirror of her lost dreams. The ship, the prince, the life she would never touch again, all gone. Yet the pull of duty, the fragile promise of immortality, drew her upward. She followed the daughters of the air into centuries of service, into silent, unending hope. It was not the ending she had imagined. It was cruel, unforgiving, relentless. And yet she would endure. She would love in silence, choose kindness over cruelty, hope over despair. Marina rose into the clouds, invisible, voiceless in a different spectral way, still serving, still hoping, still waiting. Far below, the prince sailed home with his bride, oblivious to the girl who had given everything for him. Hans Christian Andersen never found the love he sought. He died in 1875 alone. Edvard Collin, the object of his devotion, attended the funeral, reflective, saddened, and yet life continued for him. Just like the prince, Collin never truly understood Andersen's silent suffering. Yet Andersen left something behind, a story, a mirror of his pain, a girl who walked on knives, bleeding silently, fading into nothing. Bronze immortalized impermanence. Tourists snap photographs, laugh, pose, unaware of the girl dissolving into foam. The statue stands as permanence, pretending to hold fragility, a frozen lie over a truth slipping beneath the tides. We have sanitized her story for centuries, happily ever after, laughter, distractions. But the original truth waits, hidden in old books, preserved in translations. And that truth rises, slow and relentless, like something clawing up from the depths. Sometimes you give everything and receive nothing. Sometimes love sees you not at all. Sometimes you bleed silently and no one notices. Sometimes life continues while you cease to exist. Would you take the sea witch's bargain? Legs but no voice, steps that wound, love that cannot return. Marina did, Andersen did, every day. He walked on knives through aristocratic halls, suppressed his truth, watched the ones he loved marry others, smiled through the agony. And then he wrote it all down. He transformed suffering into story, invisibility into immortality. This is the true transformation, not mermaid to human, not foam to daughter of the air, pain into art, silence into story, fleeting life into something eternal. If you have ever walked on knives, if you have loved someone who could not see you, if you have surrendered your voice to belong, these stories matter. They tell us we are not alone. Would you have taken the knife? Kill the prince and live, or spare him and die? There is no right answer. That is the question. The Little Mermaid chose love over survival, happiness over self, dissolution over harm. Was she a fool, a saint, a victim, a hero? Perhaps she was simply someone in love, and maybe that is enough. The prince awakens. She is gone. He feels fleeting sadness, then moves on, Invisible above, Marina drifts onward. Neither alive nor dead, neither saved nor lost, just continuing. Sometimes that is all anyone can do.